I can tell you right now that most people who exhibit these troll-like traits on the internet are not going to survive very long if the shit were to hit the fan. And that's namely because they're always focusing on the negative. The key to survival in almost any situation is focusing on the positive aspects of what's going on. So not focusing on what you don't have, but focusing on what you can do, what you do have at your disposal. Even if it's just some minuscule glimmer of hope that is going to keep you going. If you can focus on that instead of the overwhelming darkness that's abound, that's what's going to keep you surviving. Whereas the troll tends to always focus on the negative things, probably even about their own situation in life. Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So I have a bit more of a general topic that I want to discuss today, and I'm going to contextualize it, of course, in the post-collapse environment, because I try to keep this channel, as most of you know, 99% related to survival and preparedness. But what I'm going to talk about here is not just going to be limited to that context. It's going to pertain just to life in general, and of course online discourse in general, because I'm going to give this talk the sensationalist title of Post-Apocalyptic Trolling. Now I just want to start off by saying that my motivation to do this talk is not because I'm currently having any problems whatsoever with trolls on my channel. I've had trolls ever since I started the channel, but do I have a problem with them? No, I don't. 99% of the feedback I get from you guys, my subscribers, and people who just stop by and view the odd video is very positive, and for that I'm very grateful. I choose not to focus on the small amount of negativity that comes up when I do publish a video, because that would just be my own obsession if I was doing that. If I have the opportunity to focus on the 99% positive and I choose to focus on that 1% negative, that's my responsibility. I can't say I've always been that way. When I first, got on the internet, I, like many other people, didn't understand the art of online discourse, and my counter-trolling skills were really bad. And I got sucked into a lot of arguments, and I let it affect me in a lot of negative ways. I feel, however, now I've mastered the art of counter-trolling, mostly by simply ignoring it altogether. If you can look at it in the right perspective, it can actually be quite empowering to have haters. And really, they're a measure of success in a lot of ways. So I want to talk about a few things, namely what kind of trolls there are, and then, of course, how they're going to fare in a post-collapse environment. Now, I think that not everything is trolling. I embrace constructive criticism on my channel. In fact, even if it's not necessarily delivered in a way that comes off as constructive, it can still be motivating for me to make positive changes with my channel. So some people might lack good communication skills, but the point that they're trying to make is still relevant. Constructive criticism isn't always needed. I'm not just going to get defensive if somebody says something which I disagree with. There's better ways to mitigate that issue than to, just get defensive right away, because usually that just digs a deeper hole. And of course, because there is no nonverbal communication on the internet, it's very easy to miscommunicate with people. So it's best to kind of just take what you can from any form of criticism that you receive and, run with it. And at least if somebody is making an argument against what I'm doing, at least if they're taking the time to make an argument and not just attacking me personally or my character, or, what they think they know of my character, then at least they deserve to be heard, even if it's not necessarily communicated in the most polite of ways. So I'm not really talking about those constructive critics in this video. Now, when constructive criticism, however, does become trolling is when people have an inherent tendency towards pessimism. Now, if you go back to my video that I did about the criminology of SHDF, don't go back yet, wait till you watch the rest of this video, obviously. But I did a video called The Criminology of the Post-Collapse Environment, and basically there was 8 classes of criminals that I identified as possible threats. And the first four within that typology weren't necessarily out for sadistic means, whereas the last four categories, categories 5 through 8, they were more concerned with, being mischievous, marauding, conquering, and psychopathy. And those are really the groups that I feel lots of trolls are going to fall into. Definitely not the conquerors, because there's absolutely nothing conquering about going on the internet and wasting your time writing negative comments on people's videos. The conquerors are the people who are out there actually doing stuff and getting ahead and building their own empires within this paradigm that we have going on right now, while it's still functioning. Those are the conquerors. I wouldn't worry about them being the conquerors. They're going to be the petty thugs. They're going to be the rapists, the people who just do atrocious things for the same reason they do it on the internet, because it makes themselves feel better. But before we get into a bit more about that, we have to understand why people might troll in the first place. Now, like I've said before, most trolls are just pessimistic. So nobody who comes from a place of love and happiness and contention is going to waste their time on the internet belittling people and trolling them. Quite frankly, you have to have a pretty miserable life, or you had to have some really bad stuff happen to you for you to want to waste your time on that. Because let's be really frank here, that anybody who matters doesn't troll on the internet. Do you really think that the successful people out there, people who are bent on self-improvement and getting ahead financially, educationally, building a family, being a good role model to their kids, do you really think that they're spending time on the internet trolling people? Like, do you really think that that makes them a better person to hide behind the veil of anonymity and be this anonymous coward where you're trying to put people down so you can feel superior, when in all actuality, it's actually not making you superior in the real world. It's actually making you more inferior and weaker, because you're wasting your time belittling somebody else. And it really is like a drug, because it makes people feel superior when they do it. When they slander somebody on the internet, it might make them temporarily feel good, just like a drug would, but in the long term it actually weakens them, because they've exhausted themselves emotionally on something that they never had to, that they just chose to, and they've wasted their time that they could have used doing something else, doing something productive that was actually going to give them something in return. So in terms of classifications then of what psychiatric illnesses a troll might bring to the table, and I don't always think everything is necessarily diagnosable. I think sometimes it's just envy, jealousy. Maybe some people are just obsessive. Like I said, some people lack communication skills. Some people are just lone wolves who don't really have anything positive to keep them well-rounded and focused on in life. But, there are those people who perhaps have those borderline personality traits. People who are passive-aggressive, who perhaps don't have the stones to assert themselves in everyday life in the ways that they would like to. So they overcompensate on the internet by shouting out to the world to basically make up for all those inadequate moments in their lives that they lead from day to day. So in many ways, those people are very repressed, because they desperately want to be heard in their day-to-day lives, but they just don't have the confidence in order to do that. So in order to make up for it, in order to make themselves feel better, and that's what it's all about. It's all about feeling better. It's all about, increasing your self-esteem. And with them, of course, it's not really increasing their self-esteem, because it's actually making them feel worse in the long run. It's like the episode of The Walking Dead with Morgan and his Yoda master there, who is teaching him the bow staff skills. He tells him, he's like, it doesn't matter how many people you kill or you clear, it's not going to actually make you feel better in the end. In spite of the fact that you may feel that that's making you feel better, it's really just making you feel worse and worse. So, you'll never see these people using their credentials on the internet. you'll very, very seldom ever see somebody use their real name and be a stage 5 troll. So these people are going to make up the bulk of the serious threats in a post-collapse environment that go above and beyond just theft, which is what those first 4 classes of criminals primarily revolve around. They're looking at gratifying themselves in certain ways that go beyond just having their base level needs met. So the mischievous, the marauders, and the psychopaths. And you know what? I really actually do pity these people in a lot of ways, with respect to YouTube anyways, because I see some channels who have a much bigger troll problem than I do, and their videos automatically get a huge amount of dislikes right when they post them, even though it's a great video. I mean, and even if it wasn't, a video I necessarily agree with, I don't think it warrants a dislike. I think a video has to be pretty serious for me to want to give it a dislike in most cases. Usually I'll just forget about it. But what people don't understand is that YouTube views that as engagement. So long as the troll is engaging with your channel, it doesn't matter if they're leaving a negative comment or a thumbs down, YouTube still views that as engagement and thus bumps you up in the search results. So that's another paradoxical thing, is that the troll thinks that they're having a negative impact on a person's channel by disliking a video, when there's just as much research to show that if a video has a lot of dislikes, people are just as likely to want to watch it just to see what everybody's disliking. And of course that increases your watch time, which increases your bumping up in the search results and your videos showing up in the sidebar, etc., etc. If there is a way that I could help those people to perhaps lead more meaningful lives and do more productive things, it'd be to say, get out there and do something else with your life. This is the time to build yourself up, and if you're one of these people who doesn't think, we need to prepare, and, you don't think the collapse is coming or whatever, you just think it's all stupid, well, go do something else. If you don't think it's going to happen, I'm sure there's a lot of other ways that you would find acceptable ways to better yourself or things worthwhile doing. I know some people might think that they're doing a service by attacking and trying to chastise people who have differing viewpoints than them. But, I think that's one of the things that's great about the internet, is that we all can have different opinions. And, there's so many people who claim to be all about freedom of speech and independent thought, but it's very seldom that you actually see people exercise that and embrace that. And I can't remember, what the quote was, but it's something to the effect of, I may disagree with you fundamentally from the deepest core of my being on a certain issue. Nonetheless, I have to defend your right to say that, because that's the whole idea of freedom of speech and individualism. I mean, if people want to waste their time on that, if people feel that that's getting them ahead, then hey, all the more power to you. If anything, let the trolls troll, and you just work on you getting better at what you do, getting stronger day after day, and let them fight over your leavings. So how trolls are going to fail in a post-collapse world is very simple to understand. If you go into it with a negative mindset, if you're pessimistic about everything that comes your way, you're not going to survive. Once that veil of anonymity is lifted, you're going to have to deal with the real world. It's still going to be there for you to deal with. So you're going to have to be assertive at some point. There's not going to be this protective screen in front of you to protect you from the repercussions of that world. You're actually going to have to take responsibility for your actions. And that's the huge divide that we have now, is we all live in a world now where there's this diffusion of responsibility, where we really don't have to be accountable for our actions under a lot of circumstances. And all of that goes back to the baseline when the communication grid goes down, and we actually have to have real-time interactions with people, face-to-face interactions, where we actually have to man up and be able to negotiate and to assert ourselves and assert our will. So let me know what you guys think about this. Hopefully this is well received. If not, just try to take the best and leave the rest. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.